Hi, this is Dr. Catherine Cebulski from Pediatric Associates of Mount Carmel. With the holidays right around the corner, today I'm going to be talking to you about the 5 most dangerous toys, in my opinion, that your kids could receive this holiday season. And these are in no particular order. First up, I have water beads. So these are often sold as sensory toys. They're bright and colorful, often look like candy, especially to younger children. Often when they're dry, they can be as small as a pinhead. So even if you purchase these with the intention of closely supervising your kids while they're playing with them, there's always a risk that they could fall on the floor and go unnoticed and be picked up later. When they're put in contact with water, they grow. Sometimes they're inserted in the nose or the ears, can be kind of painful, but usually they're able to be removed from there. Major risk with water beads is if a kid swallows them, because then they will swell within the body. That can lead to severe vomiting, severe abdominal pain, and sometimes life-threatening gut blockages. These are associated with thousands of emergency room visits per year. There have been several deaths that have been blamed on water bead ingestions. They're also dangerous for pets. If they lick them off the floor or something, they can have similar issues. So just avoid these if you can. Second up, I have any toys with button batteries in them. So often toys that contain these batteries will have a little plastic flap with a screw to try to keep the kid away from the battery. But often those plastic covers are flimsy, those screws are small and cheap, so it is possible that they can fall off over time, and kids are often pretty curious about these and sometimes put them in their mouths right away as a way to explore them. The worry about these types of batteries is that they can carry a strong current even when they're not actively powering a device. When that current reacts with the saliva, it causes a chemical reaction that can result in burns. So this can lead to pretty severe burns in the esophagus that can cause lifelong issues. Can also sometimes erode all the way through the esophagus and cause a hole in it, and that can lead to death. Symptoms of button battery ingestion include things like chest pain, cough, vomiting, either typical vomiting or bloody vomiting, diarrhea, belly pain, sometimes fever, especially if it's already kind of eaten all the way through something. But often, especially in the early hours when you would most want to intervene, there's no symptoms at all. So if you think there's a chance your child may have swallowed a button battery, that is a medical emergency. Even if you're 95% certain that it was a coin or something else, I would head straight to the emergency department so that they can get x-rays and make sure that there's nothing extra that needs to be done for your child. If your child is over 1, doesn't have any symptoms, but may have eaten a button battery in the last 12 hours, something you can do is give them 1 to 2 teaspoons of honey every 10 minutes while you're on the way to the emergency department. The theory behind that is it's going to help neutralize that chemical reaction to help protect them while you're waiting to get more definitive care. Third on my list, I have any toys with magnets here. So definitely theme of these first 3 toys are that kids like to eat and explore their toys from time to time. The worry with magnets, especially the higher powered magnets that are sometimes involved in fidget toys like this, is that they constantly want to attract to each other, and that includes within tissue within the human body. So if you swallow more than 1 of these, there's a risk that they're going to try to get together even if they're not near each other in the gut. This can lead to areas of the gut pinching off and dying, can lead to holes forming in the gut, can also lead to life-threatening intestinal blockages. Symptoms of these kind of ingestions are pretty vague. Some vomiting, sometimes some belly pains, especially if a kid is too young to tell you that this is what they swallowed, or if they're not willing to admit to it. It can be a tough thing to pick up on just by talking to a child. They do show up on x-ray, but if they are found on x-ray, often that leads to surgery. This is not something that's typically safe to kind of wait for it to pass. Third on my list, I have electric scooters. I would kind of throw hoverboards in here in the same category. The worry about electric scooters is that kids can often get going pretty quickly on them. Often they're riding them outside, either on sidewalks or in the street. On sidewalks, there's always a worry that if they hit top speed and then hit a bump or a crack in the sidewalk, they could go flying over the handlebars. And that can often lead to some pretty severe facial injuries, concussions, things like that. If they go on the street instead to avoid those sidewalk bumps, then of course there's a risk that electric motors are pretty quiet and kids are small, so it can be easy for motorists not to notice that they're in the roadway as well, which can lead to fractures, concussions, other injuries as well. If your kid is going to ride a device like this, I would be very strict about making sure they're wearing a helmet at all times when they're on it. And then things like elbow pads, knee pads can add a nice layer of protection as well. Fifth, last but not least, I have trampolines here. We see a lot of trampoline injuries every single year. Trampolines are associated with about 100,000 emergency room visits yearly. About a third of those are going to be sprains, strains, but about another third are fractures, and most trampoline-associated fractures, over 90%, are going to be happening in children. Usually we're seeing wrists, forearms, lower legs, ankles broken most commonly. Also, about 15% of trampoline injuries are traumatic brain injuries, so those can be things like concussions that can cause longer term issues, and several thousand kids every year will have a spinal cord injury on a trampoline. Often these are pretty minor and mild, but sometimes they do lead to more lifelong paralysis, weakness, things like that. Kids are creative, so even though there are all these safety measures in place that you can get with trampolines now, nothing is totally safe. Nets are helpful, but they can still collide with each other and cause injuries that way. They can still do flips and land the wrong way, so nothing is totally foolproof there. If your kids are going to be on a trampoline, I would make sure that there's an intact net that is in place and working, and then if possible limit things to one jumper at a time to decrease your risk of injuries as much as possible there. That's it. That's my list of 5. I hope you all have happy and healthy holiday season.